Some of the, there we go, the highlights of our conversation. We want to make the most of our time together, and we've organized the agenda accordingly. So here's a quick preview of how we want to spend the remaining time through this hour. First, we just want to provide really just context for why now is such a critical moment for us to have this conversation to ensure that new teachers receive the high quality preparation they need to stay and to thrive in the profession. So we'll get that. Then we're going to offer more information about the state's current licensure exam with the performance and compare that to a performance-based assessment that's called edTPA that we've been piloting here in Texas for the past few years and are coming up on this really critical policy making kind of window. So that'll be our overview. And then the highlight, of course, is the event title suggests. We're going to pass the mic to a few Texas teachers who've generously given their time and will be sharing their preparation experiences as it relates to edTPA as well. And then finally, last but not least, we're just going to end with some information about the policymaking process, some resources for you if you are so moved to take some time-sensitive advocacy action. So that is the agenda for this evening. At this point, I'm going to keep letting people in. Welcome, welcome. And I'm going to invite our last minute substitution. We're so thankful to have Kate Greer here for us from the Commit Partnership, really just to provide, again, some context for the urgent need to improve teacher prep in Texas. And so with that, I guess I'll just hand it off to you, Kate.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Greer. I'm the Pre-K-12 Policy Director for the Commit Partnership, and I'm really glad to be here today on behalf of my colleague, Dominique McCain, who leads our Pre-K-12 programmatic work at Commit. I just want to dig right in because we are tight on time and I want to be respectful of what everyone has going on this evening. Most of you are already probably pretty familiar with the extensive research that shows teachers are the #1 predictor of student success inside the classroom. And it's not even close when you compare it to other in-school factors. You would think that that means we have every reason we need to invest in recruiting, preparing, developing, and retaining diverse and effective educators. And I'm right here today to tell you that it is time to finally embrace and support high quality preparation, support, and retention. We need to do the right thing by those who choose to enter the teaching profession and by the students who are counting on them. The reality is that teacher shortages and teacher turnovers are not new. Even before the pandemic, enrollment in Texas educator prep programs had reached a 20-year low. In 2018, there were just over 12,000 candidates enrolled in these programs compared to more than double the number of open teaching positions across the state. And nearly 40% of these first-year teachers enter classrooms with what are called intern certificates and little to no clinical experience. For students, that means going to schools where they have a brand new teacher year after year. This revolving door of teachers can deeply affect student learning. High turnover creates instability, making it difficult for schools to create coherent instruction and implement new initiatives. And who's most affected by inexperienced teachers and high teacher turnover? According to EdTrust's research, 34% of Black students and 29% of Latino students in Texas attended a school in which more than 1 in 5 teachers were considered novice. Now let's layer on the long-term effort required to address students' unfinished learning from the pandemic. Regardless of student group, our statewide learning outcomes have slid back to about 2012 or 2013 levels after nearly a decade of steady improvement. The gaps that existed before for Black, Latino, and low-income students have only been made worse by this. So where do we go from here? Improving retention is really the only way to address issues of teacher supply. That means doing everything we can to prepare incoming educators to stay and excel in the classroom, and by providing more practice-based opportunities and building systems of feedback, coaching, and support around them. A big part of what Commit does, and it's what Dominique leads, is helping system leaders, districts, and teacher prep programs work together, especially through these critical handoffs. Quality teacher preparation requires that kind of close coordination and communication between prep program staff, mentor teachers, school leaders, and district admin. Historically, these partners haven't really shared a common language or common data to support teacher candidates to evaluate instructional skills, pinpoint strengths, and identify areas for development. So now we've piloted edTPA for the past 3 years, including the height of the pandemic, and preparation programs of all kinds have risen to the occasion and proven that it is possible to do this. In fact, many have embraced the process as a way to continuously improve their programs to benefit the candidates that they prepare. It's true that some may be resistant, but I just want to end with this reminder. We are really not doing anyone any favors by putting quantity over quality and by accepting poorly prepared teachers. It's quite the opposite. We're setting up new teachers to struggle and leave the classroom, and we're setting up schools to keep churning through the revolving door. And worst of all, we are failing our students who need and deserve effective and experienced teachers. So I'm really excited to give you all the opportunity tonight to hear from teachers specifically and to answer any questions that you may have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate, for providing those words. And I think really just setting the stakes for this issue and for the rest of the evening's conversation. So I want to next invite, well, we asked you earlier to share your level of familiarity with edTPA, and we got, you know, the kind of mix that we wanted to see. And so it's my honor next to invite our friends at Educate Texas, starting with Ryan Franklin, to provide just an introductory overview. Make sure we have everybody kind of at least with a level set of knowledge. And I can't think of anybody better positioned to help us to do that than Ryan. Before joining Educate Texas, where he now leads the policy and advocacy strategy in both K-12 and higher ed, Ryan was a teacher in Central Texas. He was a legislative staffer in, I believe it was Texas's Senate Education Committee, and he was the Associate Commissioner for Educator Leadership and Quality at TEA. So I'll just say, I think it's probably hard to find someone in Texas who knows more about teacher preparation and certification policy than Ryan. And with that, I'll hand it off to him and load up some visuals to help.
Thanks so much, Jonathan, and all of you for giving of your time to come together to learn a little bit more or to share out about edTPA. I think the real experts are soon to come on the agenda, so I'll be quick here with the background and context, but just wanted to level set because, as Kate alluded to, there is no state that has the diversity in quality and routes and different pathways into the teaching profession that no one can rival Texas in that. And so I think with such a significant portion of our candidates coming through alternative certification programs, and you know, a third of our candidates come in through one alternative certification program in particular. So it's really a unique context here. And so I think edTPA gives us an opportunity to have a common measuring stick that is meaningful and does help sort of transcend some of the language barriers between preparation and the real world of classroom teaching. For those of you who are current or former teachers in Texas, I am betting that most of you had experience with something called the PPR, which is a pedagogy and professional responsibilities slide or exam. And for the current rate of $116, you get to go spend 5 hours in a testing center answering multiple choice questions on pedagogy that is neither grade specific nor content specific. And those of you, I had the pleasure of being a high school and junior high English teacher, and I know that the skills I needed to be successful in my classroom are fundamentally different than those that I might have needed were I teaching elementary math, and that those grade levels matter and the content specificity really matters. And with the current PPR, you meet that cut score and you move into the classroom and you are deemed ready to teach, regardless of the quality of actual practice-based instruction. So edTPA looks at moving from a fill in the blank or a multiple guess test to a more authentic test that brings forward the real authentic task of our classroom teachers of lesson planning based on the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and then delivering that instruction with and videoing that instruction to look at student engagement and differentiation, and then actually assessing student learning and having candidates reflect on that, and sort of this cycle that all teachers go through of planning, instructing, and assessing in a much more authentic way than a multiple choice test can do. This has been, edTPA has been used in a number of states, but TEA has followed a lengthy implementation timeline that is much longer and much more deliberate and intentional than any other state has done. I feel pretty confident in saying, with 3 years of a pilot in a diverse cross-section of educator preparation programs, from alternative certification programs in for-profit entities and nonprofit entities and education service centers, all the way through our 4-year institutions of all types, with an increasing number of candidates. And this, as Kate mentioned, through the pandemic. And so there's been a robust pilot sample to draw on and learn a whole lot of lessons. And so what you see in the rows at the bottom contemplate where the rulemaking is proposed for a long-term implementation of edTPA to replace that PPR exam, and what that would look like. And still, this is given several years of ramp up period for our candidates and preparation programs and districts to get up to speed to deliver this more rigorous and authentic exam. What we've seen from the data is that with just a few years of adjustment time for the participating pilot programs, much more equity across our different demographic groups than even our current PPR exam has. And we think this speaks to the authenticity of the task, and it not just being a multiple choice guess. I don't know about you, but I remember the advice when I was signing up for the PPR, and the advice was to pick the answer that's least likely to work in the real world. And I think this is sort of directly counter to that with what it's asking candidates to do. And it's not just about a cut score on a test, it's about the experience of going through it and programs supporting candidates as they learn the craft of teaching and the art of teaching, and really build those skills in an authentic way in their clinical assignment. At Educate Texas, we had the good fortune of working on a community of practice with a number of the pilot programs around the state. And I'd love to turn it over to my colleague, Priscilla Aquino Garza, to talk a little bit more about some of the lessons and takeaways from that pilot and that community of practice she led.
Thank you, Ryan. And part of the biggest piece of this was that at the time, and I'll even step back a little further, our teacher preparation programs have their standards, right? There's expectations, there's regulations and all that, but there isn't the same work that occurs. Some of you obviously are districts and in other institutions where there's some collaboration, occurring perhaps across your districts, perhaps across your campuses. The world of EPP is actually a little more siloed, even more than you can imagine. People are spread out all across the state, and they have different communities that they're trying to get excited to go through a teaching program. And so one of the biggest pieces was recognizing that these folks were about to embark on this pilot program that in many ways, and Ryan, we talked about this back in the day, was this is an opportunity for it is an assessment, but it's all about what you do to lead to that assessment, right? How you evaluate all the different components of your preparation program, and whether you're actually preparing educators for these skill sets that we believe are actually the things that teachers need more practice in so that they can be successful on day one, right? And so I was a 7th and 8th grade teacher. I had a whole year of training, and it still felt daunting that first day when I was in charge, right? And so how do you make sure that some of that is happening in a way that's very authentic and really allows an educator to be more aware of the things it takes to actually lead the classroom when there isn't a co-teacher in the room watching you, when there isn't someone to bail you out, so to speak. And that was something that we really got excited about in building a community of practice where the EPPs in the pilot could share and align and have these aha moments. And it wasn't just about like, how are you doing at TPA, but it's, how did you have to How did you bring your faculty along, right? Like, what did you have to adjust in your syllabi? Did you change the order of coursework, right? Things like that. What are some of the tools that you had to build to make sure that everybody understood what edTPA even was and why it's different than how we've done testing in recent times? So we really focused a lot on that in this community of practice. We did some tactical things, we did some conversations, we did some building. And I think a lot of what we saw was just this opportunity to implement, gave programs an opportunity to really reboot and redesign what they were already doing and make it stronger with the student teacher in the heart of all that work, and make sure that they kept thinking about some of the ways that they were working with their faculty across their universities or their alternative certification programs, and with the districts that they now were needing to socialize in some ways how edTPA was different and the kind of work that they could expect from their teachers. I'll stop there because I know we're at time.
Some of the most common concerns we've heard or are aware of around edTPA, or one of the leading ones is the cost and the increased cost of edTPA. And we think, based on promising practices from other states, there are opportunities to provide need-based assistance with some of these costs, or to fold some of the exam costs into program costs to make this eligible for financial aid. Another has been concern around the impact of different demographic groups. From what we've seen of the pilot data and some indications in other states as well, is that by being more authentic, it actually closes some of the gaps in our current multiple choice assessments. And it's actually showing what the candidates can do, not how well they can handle the multiple choice test. I think we're all concerned about the teacher shortages and the staffing challenges our districts are facing. As Kate mentioned earlier, retention is an important component of addressing this, but I think this is part of why the long timeline for implementation and adjustment is such an important approach. I think many of us feel that better prepared teachers are more likely to be retained, and I think data supports that. And there's a whole lot more to teacher retention challenges than a test on the front end can address. And finally, I think we've heard some concerns about edTPA being a national test that's used in other states. I think while the framework of the test is something that's used in multiple states, the actual content that the candidates are planning, assessing, delivering instruction on is based on the TEKS, and that's what they're asked to do and aligned with what our teachers are asked to teach in the real world. So appreciate the opportunity to kind of level set and provide that context, and looking forward to hearing from the real experts out there.
Thank you, Ryan. And that's exactly what we're about to do. So thank you again. Appreciate the overview. Hopefully, especially for those who joined tonight and said, I've heard of it, but don't really know what it is, or have never even heard of edTPA. Hopefully the background here from Ryan and Priscilla has been of some value. So with that though, and before I hand it over to Arthur, who's really going to kick off the conversation with our guest speakers, I'd like to ask Stephanie Perry to join us. She's going to briefly share her experience as someone supporting first-year teachers who are still completing edTPA as teachers of record with those intern certificates. And again, that's about 40% of the new teachers who enter the classroom every year. So Stephanie has served as a school and district leader previously, and she now works for the Inspire Texas Alternative Certification Program at Region 4 Education Service Center. And if I can find Stephanie, there you are. I'm gonna hopefully put the spotlight on you.
Pin me so I can be in the spotlight. There you go.
All right, so I'm gonna add you. Hopefully everybody can see the two of us. So my first question, throughout this edTPA pilot that Ryan just kind of laid out, you and I think some others on the call have been out there in the field supporting first-year intern teachers and their mentor teachers. So I just would love to get your perspective. How have you seen that process play out? How have you seen it help not just the novice teachers, themselves, but also people in your position and others who are supporting novice teachers?
That's a great question, Jonathan. Thank you so much. And as you mentioned, the pilot has been in place for 3 years at Inspire Texas. We have been a part of the pilot for 3 years, and we have gone full scale implementation this 21-22 academic school year with all of our candidates. So all of our candidates are in edTPA and involved in that process. So we found the need leading up to this year to definitely impact our curriculum in a different way, so that when our candidates went into the classroom to be teacher candidates, first year teacher, and novice teachers, they were prepared for what that looked like. And so then we knew we had to create a space and supports and structures so that the teacher candidates, the mentors, the field supervisors, and the staff at Inspire Texas all were able to have that shared common language. So what we've worked on so much this year, and I'm going to use a sports analogy, I'm a sports mom, so is that practice to game day type thing. So in every aspect of what our candidates have experienced in their pre-service coursework, and then when they step into a classroom, they are preparing every single day that practice to be able to complete their edTPA portfolio. So we have structures in place where they have a instructor that leads them through a course that provides that structure for them. Our mentors are there for them to support them. And that, again, that common language that we build around so that we're all speaking the same language. So at any given point in time, a teacher candidate has support from Inspire Texas, from their district mentor, from their field supervisor, and then from an instructor as well. So we realized that with that combination of that support, we were able to successfully move our candidates from being nervous about being a part of edTPA because it was new for them, but they didn't realize they were practicing it in their pre-service coursework. So then we moved them forward into edTPA so that they were able to then have that game day experience where they were able to go through all 3 or 4 tasks, depending on their handbook, and feel that success. So I think the biggest takeaway for us in that respect was having that common language built in prior to them stepping into the classroom in their pre-service coursework, but then also creating the space and the resources available to them to be able to ask questions of whomever they felt most comfortable with so that they could be successful.
That's great. And I love the sports analogy too. I think, one of the pieces of edTPA is this idea of actual, I think, video of a lesson being delivered. And I know that your colleagues at Region 4 have told me, when you get to the campus and you start talking about the sports teams and the marching band, well, what do they do? And what do their coaches do to help them improve their performance?
They watch that video.
They watch that video. They go to the tape. And so I think if it's good enough for our student athletes, it should be good enough personally for our teachers and future teachers. We did everything in our power to try and get some candidates that you work with, but they are first year teachers themselves. This is a very busy and demanding time of year with tutoring and other commitments. So I was wondering if you could just maybe share the stories of 1 or 2 of your candidates who have completed edTPA that really stand out when you think about the impact that it's had, and really the ability that our teacher candidates have to do this and with the right support really succeed.
So yes, absolutely. And I laughed, and I don't know if anybody else had that same thought. So when Ryan mentioned when the PPR test was, answer it in the way that it's not supposed to be answered. It's that utopia world, right? That was how it was for me when I took the PPR many, many, many years ago. So in looking at our candidates now, there are 2 that stick out to me that are the polar opposite of what not to do and what they should be doing. So one of our candidates that I want to brag about is at a high needs middle school, just diverse. I mean, all the things that you could think of that are not utopia, right? That are not on the PPR, that aren't reflected on the PPR exam. And with the constant support and questioning that she gave us, her instructors, her mentor, her field supervisors, she was able to score a 55. And that's amazing for us. I know we don't look at scores, we look at complete or incomplete, but she was able to take everything that we gave her, synthesize it in a way at a high needs campus, a high needs middle school, let's just say that, and score so well. And then when she got her scores back and she read her reflection, she still wanted more. She still wanted more evidence and more suggestions on how she could improve her practice as a teacher. And so I think that in itself is just amazing, because she wanted and she was hungry for that, that validation and that critical piece of how she can improve her craft. So that was amazing in itself for her. Our other candidate that we wish would have been able to be on the call today was what we all think of as magical unicorns, a bilingual EC SPED teacher. So, I mean, think about all that. So EC through 6 and special education and bilingual. So that's, in my world, as a former principal, that was a unicorn, right? You know, you just can't ever find many of those. So talking about going through 2 handbooks, which she did phenomenally, right? So she really took that support that was given to her, the common language, and she paced herself out, and she was able to complete her EC through 6 and then her SPED. And it was all because she had the passion to do it, and that she wanted to be able to be that bilingual EC through 6 SPED teacher in a PPCD program. I mean, it was just, it's a unicorn. So
There's a few Texas teachers who actually.
Oh, sounds like all the things.
sounds like it's time. Dr. Polly's telling me it's time. I told you I could talk a lot. Jonathan, I'm sorry.
No, we're
No,
we're
no,
gonna
no,
pass
not
it.
at all.
We're going to pass it. Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing just a couple of those stories, for all the great work. You know, these are the folks that we want and that we need, right? To be stepping into this profession at this moment in time, and just keep up the great work. Sending our support to you and to all of the intern teachers that y'all are supporting. So Arthur, I'm gonna hand it off to you to get to the real panel.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you all for being here. My name is Arthur Polly, and I'm the policy manager at Teach Plus Texas. I'm excited for you all to hear from a few of our best and brightest, a few teachers who actually moved through the edTPA process. But before we dig in, I want to give them an opportunity. I want to give these trailblazers an opportunity to introduce themselves. And with that being said, we're going to start with Zavi. Zavi, do you mind coming off mute and just introducing yourself so everybody knows who you are and where you're at?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Zavi Sheldon. I'm a 3rd year 8th grade ELAR teacher in Dallas. I'm also in the final year of a 4-year program called Urban Teachers, which is an alternative certification program here in DFW.
Thank you, Zavi. Zaida, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Saida Lara. I am currently a student teacher at a 5th grade reading classroom, and I will be graduating with my education degree from Texas Tech in May.
Thank you, Zaida. And Addison.
Hi everyone, I'm Addison Old. I teach 5th grade in Austin, Texas. I'm in my 6th year of teaching, and prior to moving to Texas about 4 years ago, I taught in Nashville, Tennessee, where I completed my traditional ed prep program, where I actually completed the edTPA during that program. And then as I moved to Texas and transitioned my teaching license to our new state, I also took the PPR exam.
Thank you. Before we jump into our questions, I want to take this opportunity and thank you all for agreeing to be a part of our panel. As I said earlier, and I'll continue to reiterate, we literally could not do this without you, and we're extremely grateful for you all of donating and extending your time today. With that said, we're going to go right next. With that said, we're going to move into our questioning, and we're going to start with Addison. Addison, we know that high quality preparation is critical for teachers to succeed, stay, and thrive in the profession. Can you talk briefly about your pathway into the classroom and how your prep program prepared you for success?
Yes, so my preparation program was actually a a flagship university for using edTPA prior to it actually being required in the state of Tennessee. It was Vanderbilt University. And part of the program focused on teaching pre-service teachers the methods and the research behind strong instructional strategies, keeping those students engaged. And then there was also a big focus on our instructional planning. So learning how to incorporate state standards, make sure we had objectives and goals for our lessons, how to engage our students, and then actually deliver the content and assess their progress. And a third component, and this was all in the preparation program and how it was designed in my coursework, I guess, was reflecting on my teaching. So I was in the classroom starting my sophomore year of college, observing veteran teachers, getting a little practice working with small groups of students, and getting lots of teaching practice even before I got to my student teaching experience. And then through that time, across all of those different semesters, we had times where we had to record our self-teaching and then reflect on, okay, what did you do well here? What are your areas of growth? And all of that kind of culminated eventually when I got to my edTPA experience during student teaching. But really reflecting on my practice, even before I was an actual teacher, I think is something that has set me up for success as a current classroom teacher.
Thank you, Addison. Zaida, I'm going to have you answer the same question. I'm going to repeat it, and then I'm going to have you answer it. So can you talk briefly about your pathway into the classroom and how your prep program prepared you for success?
So Texas Tech program is great at teaching us how to effectively plan, how to assess our students' knowledge. And the edTPA assessment truly was an opportunity for me to practice all of those things and to show myself and others that I was truly prepared to be a teacher next year. And it was truly a great experience because I got to practice all of the things that I had learned in my program and with the support of my mentor teacher. And so truly it was an amazing experience because I truly got to see the value of the assessment and to truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Zaida, for sharing with us. And Zavi, can you wrap this first question up as we prepare to move to question 2?
Yeah, so my prep program, Urban Teachers, focuses on supporting educators for longevity in the classroom, specifically with the mission of supporting urban schools and communities. And I chose that path into teaching because it meant that I got to spend a year co-teaching with a master teacher in DISD, completing master's coursework and receiving coaching and certification support, all before I moved into a teacher of record role. And having been through all of that, I can really say that edTPA is in keeping with that training. It connects to the practices we learn in grad school and then the practices that we implement with our co-teaching. So all of that really makes me feel like it's a good path for new teachers to take.
Thank you, Zavi. With that said, we're going to move right into question number 2. So all of you moved through the edTPA process, but each of you had very unique experiences. Zaida, your experience was probably the most unique of our group of panelists today. So we're going to start question 2 off with you. So as you prepared for and completed your edTPA portfolio, describe the kind of experiences and support that were most impactful to your development as a teacher, or on your pathway as a teacher, on your pathway as a teacher.
So unfortunately, the week that I was supposed to do my edTPA teaching, I had COVID. And so I had to restart my whole planning. And through that, I learned that it's very beneficial to truly have myself plan a whole week of lesson plans because I had never done that before. And through the support that I received from my mentor teacher, it was just so wonderful to see that I could do it myself and that I could collaborate with others. Truly, the materials and the planning and the feedback that I received from her was truly very beneficial, and I can truly see how it will help my future teaching practices.
So, Zaida, I know we've spoke briefly about your mentor teacher. Can you tell us a little bit more about your mentor teacher and how she coached you through this process and what the feedback looked like?
Right. So she has been teaching for 30 years. She is about to retire. And we have a great relationship, and we can talk about anything. I told her my concerns. I told her, this is why I'm doing this day, and then I'm moving on to this because, you know, our students need this and all of that. So truly knowing our students and truly talking about their needs was very helpful. And then also the fact that she understood what edTPA was and what I was required to do truly helped her coach me in a way that was very beneficial for me. It just felt like a great experience because I felt supported and I felt like I could be successful.
Thank you, Zaida. I'm going to ask you the same question, Zavi. As you prepared for and completed your edTPA portfolio, describe the kind of experiences and support that were most impactful to your development as a teacher.
Yeah, so for a lot of my master's coursework, I had to record myself and write a lot of reflections. And I think from my perspective, it's the recorded and written reflection elements of edTPA that support growth in a way that I don't know how a one-time certification multiple choice test could. It's really hard to actually be ready for your first year of teaching, you know, in theory, what you're supposed to be doing. And then it's another thing entirely to like grapple with the imperfections of your practice at the start. So like having to film myself for the video portion and then watch it and reflect on it helped me understand a lot more specifically my growth areas. It was uncomfortable and it was challenging. I think that's a lot of candidates has a hesitancy about edTPA. But it promotes an attitude of like continuously seeking improvement that like every teacher will really benefit from, as well as their students.
Thank you, Zavi. Addison, you had a very, again, not to keep using this like, oh, unique experience, but Addison, you did have a very unique experience. When you were moving through edTPA at Vanderbilt, it hadn't necessarily been adopted by the state. It was still kind of going through that rollout process. So you were kind of like the trailblazer, and you were doing some groundbreaking work in your time in Tennessee. So can you speak, as you prepared for and completed your edTPA portfolio, can you describe the kind of experiences and support that were most impactful to your development as a teacher?
Yes, I think similar to Zavi, the recording of my teaching throughout my whole ed preparation program was really crucial or critical to me growing as a teacher, because by the time I reached my edTPA experience, I'd been recording, you know, throughout my student teaching experience, even before the week that I recorded my edTPA portfolio lessons. And so I was able to kind of reflect on what I needed to improve and those kinds of things in order to move forward and truly analyze my teaching and figure out where I could grow in order to complete the portfolio. I think additionally, we had field supervisors too, as some people have talked about, that came and visited our classroom, gave us feedback on lessons prior to TPA, the edTPA and post edTPA, and that was a part of the student teaching experience. So that feedback with a mentor at the university level was super helpful for me. And then we also had a student teaching professor, and she kind of guided us through like, these are all the steps. And so we had plenty of notice. I think they started telling us about the edTPA our junior year, so our third year of the program. And so we actually were able to kind of talk with the people in the cohort above us and kind of hear from their experiences, even though we were still a year away from our own edTPA experience. And so I think kind of learning from people who had completed it and what their experience was, and then also just getting the practice of the skills that are assessed in the portfolio was kind of the crucial piece for me.
Thank you, Addison. And I don't mean to put you on the spot. So I know as we talked through your edTPA process initially, one of the things for you, Addison is an exemplar student, and she's an exemplar teacher. I can give you a backstory. Me and Addison interned together in Washington, D.C. What was like 2013, and she's always been like a person who's led from the front. But as we talked about her edTPA experience, one thing she shared with me is that initially in her first she didn't pass all parts of the edTPA and she had to go back and redo one part. So can you help me? Can you kind of speak to what that process looked like and how you prepared and how you went back and how that affected you, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think for being a high achiever and a perfectionist personality, that was something that was difficult for me in the moment. But I think at that time, it was still a passing score, but Vanderbilt had a higher standard of what they wanted us to meet in order to graduate and move forward as future teachers. And so if it was, and I forget kind of the rubric score, but depending on the rubric score, there was a cutoff, and they said if you made less than this score on the rubric, you're going to redo that piece. And it didn't go back to the edTPA people. It was just kind of an internal process to continue that reflection of practice. And part of my piece, if I remember correctly, it was on a reflection piece of a lesson, and making sure that I was truly reflecting on the growth of my teaching and making sure that the students were achieving.
Thank you, Addison, and thank you for allowing me to put you on the spot and handling it the only way Addison could. So we're going to move to our next question. We have about 2 questions left. So Zaida, you had a very unique experience, and you had a very you had a COVID experience as you moved through the edTPA. A common misconception about edTPA is that it will make it harder to meet the state's demand for teachers. How would you, based on your experience, how would you respond to this misconception?
I do understand the reservations as to why people might say that it could impact in a negative way that aspect of teaching. However, I think that any teacher candidate that is well prepared and that has the drive to succeed and to truly be the best teacher possible for the students can definitely do this. I did this within 5 days. I did my whole writing part in 5 days, and I was still able to get a good score. I think that it just comes with resilience and truly wanting the best for students. So I think it's beneficial to have this assessment to truly make sure that we have capable teachers, because truly the most important thing in education is our students. So I think while there are some reservations, and I understand that it's more complicated, but I think it just shows that how strong and how capable teachers can be in the state of Texas.
Thank you, Zaida. Zavi, I'll pose the same question for you and to you. A common misconception about edTPA is that it will make it harder to meet the state's demand for teachers. How would you respond to this misconception?
Yeah, I mean, as some of our previous speakers have noted, teacher shortages predate conversations about edTPA in the state. My perspective is that setting high professional standards for working in education will only benefit students, and also that you see that professions with rigorous expectations tend to attract driven and motivated people, and that's who we need and that's who we want teaching our students. I can say from experience the past couple of years now as a teacher, that it's just as disruptive to have an unprepared teacher or somebody who leaves partway through the year as it is to have an unfilled position. It's even more chaotic when you're dealing with that. So when teachers are not well prepared, even if they have a passion for education and want to be there, they will leave the classroom, and they need to be prepared. They deserve to be prepared in a way that that helps them fulfill their desire to serve our communities.
Thank you, Zavi. And Addison, I'll repeat it one more time, just so we're clear. A common misconception about edTPA is that it will make it harder to meet the state's demand for teachers. How would you respond to this claim?
I think, the way that an EPP sets up their program to prepare their teachers, whether it's a traditional certification or alternative certification, there's a way to prepare teachers to be ready for the edTPA through that support in their coursework. And with that, being able to complete it in a timely manner. And while you're getting the certification and you're in that coursework, whichever certification route you're taking, I think that will ultimately be better for Texas students and Texas teachers. I think it's much harder for us to still rely on a multiple choice test that doesn't necessarily meet all of the diversity of our state, as Mr. Franklin mentioned earlier. And I think having a test that is going to meet the needs of pre-service teachers and where they're at in their teaching certification process will ultimately prepare them for the classroom better, and will help our teacher demand problem in the future.
Thank you. So we're going to move to our last question. At Teach Plus, we put teachers at the center of all of our work because we truly believe that teachers are experts. And because we believe that, our next question, I want to lean on and borrow from some of your expertise. Over the next several weeks, policymakers in Austin will be deciding whether to adopt edTPA as a required assessment for all new teachers to obtain full certification. Based on the expertise you have, based on your experience, what is one thing you want them to know as they move to make this decision? And we'll start with Addison on this last question.
Right. Well, edTPA prepared me to plan engaging lessons, differentiate instruction, and make data-informed decisions that almost guaranteed student growth and eventual achievement for every student that I've taught in my 6 years. And so I think in adopting edTPA as a required assessment, policymakers will set the stage to prepare more teachers for success in instruction, which ultimately means that more Texas students succeed too. And that's our ultimate goal, to make sure that the future is bright and our students are prepared for the world that they'll eventually be in.
Thank you, Addison. Zaida, same question to you. What is one thing, as they move to kind of make their decision on edTPA, policymakers, what is one thing you want them to know as they make their decision?
As I had mentioned before, I think that with the right preparation, with the right guidance, any student teacher or any teacher candidate can be successful and pass the edTPA assessment. And it only makes sense to move to that because lately, through research and everything, we have been moving in the classroom to assessing our students in a more authentic way. So it makes sense that we would be assessed in a similar way. And I think it truly will ensure that we have quality teachers for our students.
Thank you, Zaida. Zabi, you're going to bring us home. As policymakers move to make their decision on edTPA, what is one thing you want them to know?
Yeah, so without echoing too much and repeating what my other panelists have said, I guess I would just add that there's a lot of work still to be done in our classrooms and in our schools, especially urban schools, and especially after the last couple of years. We made changes we never could have anticipated to big systems in order to meet the needs of our students. And so now it's time to make a big change that will support the needs of teachers. Major shifts like this are always a challenge, and education can be slow to make these changes. But there's testimony and evidence that I hope shows that it's worth it.
Thank you. You all did a phenomenal job. And again, I appreciate your time. We literally, not figuratively, we literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you for your time. And with that being said, I'm going to pass the microphone back to Jonathan.
Oh. All right.
One of your friends in to give me
I gotcha. Thanks, everybody. And just, gosh, one more time, thank you to the wonderful panel of teachers, to you, Arthur, for moderating the conversation. We've got about 5 minutes left, but I don't want you to go anywhere. Before we close, we hope you're willing to take some small action based on what you've learned tonight to kind of move this conversation forward in the public. So let me go back to here. I think Ryan shared a little bit of this, but I wanted to bring it back. And I think it dovetails on Arthur's last question. So over these next 2 months, right, the rest of April, May, and into the middle of June, it's these two bodies, and we'll talk about them a little bit more, the State Board for Educator Certification, or SBEC, and the State Board of Education, or SBOE, we're going to make the decision on whether or not Texas moves ahead with edTPA and chooses to adopt this important tool to improve the systems responsible for coaching and supporting the more than 25,000 new teachers who enter our Texas classrooms every year. So we thought it might be a good idea, if you don't already know, to introduce you to these entities. So this is the State Board for Educator Certification. This body was created by the legislature in 1995, relatively new to the world of the regulatory world, and it oversees, as the name implies, all aspects of the preparation, certification, and standards of conduct for public school educators. You can see there are 15 members on the screen, including 11 that are voting members, and they are appointed by the governor to 6-year terms. You can see there are 4 classroom teachers, 1 counselor, 2 administrators, and 4 citizens. And then the 4 non-voting members also serve on the board. And again, the governor appoints them. You can see that they represent the teacher preparation space, both a 4-year and alt cert, as well as 2 of the agencies that you would imagine and assume would be there. TEA on the K-12 side, and the Higher Education Coordinating Board, since they oversee our 4-year IHEs. And so in the box to the side, just want you to see this, right? So this is the entity, even if the members have changed, who back in 2019 adopted the pilot and decided it was worth going through the 3 years to learn more and to understand what the implementation would look like that Ryan and Priscilla walked us through. And at their next meeting on April 29th, they kind of have the final vote. They've taken all the preliminary votes. They've made amendments based on the stakeholder feedback they've gotten. And so April 29th, they are expected to vote on edTPA adoption. There are 11 voting members, a majority, 6 of the voting members are required to advance to the next phase, which is then it goes to the State Board of Education. And you can see the members here on your screen. Now, unlike SBEC, SBOE, it's an elected and partisan body of 15 members, and they all represent single member districts from across the state. The governor appoints one of the members to be the chair. That position is currently held by Kevin Ellis. And among the primary responsibilities, they have many, but one of the primary responsibilities of the state board is to provide final review of the rules that are proposed by SBEC. So if that State Board for Ed certification on April 29th moves this forward, it will then go to the State Board of Education, who will then vote. I think they meet for like 3 days, but it's June 14th to the 17th. And that's when they would vote on what they would say is edTPA ratification, right? So essentially giving the thumbs up to what SBEC passes to them. And here they need 6 votes. Again, it's not a majority, but they need just 6 votes to ratify the SBEC decision. And you can see I put a star next to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5 members of a specific committee, the Committee on School Initiatives. And they are the primary or first line, if you will, who are responsible for reviewing the SBEC rules. But again, it'll be a vote of the entire body. But these, of course, are the folks who a lot of the board members will look to first as they decide what the right decision is when they vote later in June. So we wanted to provide you with some opportunities, or at least some ideas for how you might take action over the next several weeks. So 1, you can sign up to provide testimony to either or both of these entities. So again, the SBEC will meet on the 29th. I think you need to sign up a couple of days prior. So that would be the 27th. That's next Wednesday. So if that's too soon, you can also think about that SBOE meeting that'll be in mid-June. And again, testimony can be written, it can be oral, if in person, whatever works best. If you want to just meet privately with your State Board of Ed representative, you can find out who that is. We'll make sure that we provide you that tool if you don't already know how to find your SBOE rep. And just talk to them. I'll tell you, they are relatively accessible as elected officials. If you email them, if you call them, they are pretty prompt in getting back to you. Another option is to author an op-ed. I know that can seem scary, but I think the teacher voices, those of you who are have direct experience with edTPA, are really uniquely positioned to kind of share your story. And if you're interested, we can also make sure, if you just don't want to write something, but would be willing to talk with the reporter who might be interested in covering this and getting a range of perspectives, we can help you do that. Third thing, or the second to last thing, is maybe you're a part of an organization, whether that's a nonprofit, a teacher group, any kind of entity at all. Have the conversation, right? If they've never heard of edTPA, or they haven't weighed in, or haven't thought about whether or not it makes sense to engage in some way, send a note to their leadership and ask, and certainly if you feel willing, express your support and encourage them to learn more and to weigh in. And then the last thing, which is we would not leave you without something you could do right now, which is we've created a really easy to use phone to action tool that'll populate an email that you can customize if you want, or just enter your information and it'll do it for you, to immediately contact the members of SBEC and SBOE. And somebody who's on our team here, they could drop that into the chat. I know you can't click on my screen to make sure that pops up. It should look like this, just so you know what it'll look like when you get that link. And so basically you just have to enter your name, some of your contact information. It has a pre-populated email down there that you can edit, you can customize if you want, or again, if you like the language as it is. We've tried to capture the voices of the teachers that we've talked to and of the experts to kind of echo this message. So we'll get that hopefully into the chat in any second now. I want to make sure that we do that. And then we will send these out in a follow-up email with all of those other action steps and a recording from tonight. But there are great resources out there if you just want to continue to learn more about either the pilot, about what the statewide implementation can look like, more about the community of practice that our friends at Educate Texas shared earlier, and then even some webinars hosted by edTPA. They have a 101 version that's coming up in May. So we'll make sure to share all of these links with you and really encourage everyone on the call to do something, to take an action. Thank you, Kate. It's in the chat now with the phone to action tool. And we will follow up with you to see however we can support you with those next steps. But I realize as I look at my clock that we're a couple minutes over. Again, big thank you to our panelists. Big thank you to all of our co-hosts for tonight, and especially to all of our guests who've listened in and joined. Everyone have a great, safe night. Take care. Bye.
See you later.